Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 35 of season 2. My name is Tamara, and you're listening to Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Today's guest is Jayna Swan. Today we're going to talk about orgasms and fantasies if we have time to. And she's about to launch her own podcast, Happy, Healthy, Horny. If you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. Thanks for joining me today, Jayna.
Hi, Tamara. I'm so happy to be here. Really excited about this conversation.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. And I've been telling people we met at PodFest. The last couple of episodes have been people from PodFest, and we had a great time. And we are both in the sex communicator track, so that is where we met and have lots in common. I joke to other people, she does what I do, but better. So, I mean, obviously, we both enjoy talking about this and educating and helping people. So.
Yeah, I like to think that we can be saying the same thing, but sometimes people just need to hear it from a different person or a different perspective. So not better, but just different.
True. You were always positive there too. So yeah, no, I get it. And we have different ways potentially of doing it, but we had some great conversations, and our friend Chris, who I just had on earlier too. So all right, well, let's get started. What is the biggest thing you think people need to know about orgasms mostly for women, I would say, but however you want to start the conversation.
Thank you for prefacing women, because I do work with men and women, and it can be different. So I think the biggest thing for women with orgasms, there's a lot of big pillars, but primarily you want to ensure that you get your mind warmed up first, because our brain is our biggest sex organ, believe it or not. And oftentimes we try and just get our body going and we forget about the brain. So we're thinking about the dishes need to be done and the kids need to be here, and all of these different aspects of life get into our head. And so we can't be fully present. So I do think that working on building the mental aspect before you get to the physical aspect really helps you be present in the moment. And for those who might struggle with that and want to know like a really tactical strategy for it, it's the 5 senses. In the moment, if you find yourself thinking about something that does not pertain to the person or activity that you're in, think about, what are you seeing right now? What are you hearing? What are you possibly tasting or smelling? And then what does it feel like? And when you can focus on those 5 things, it brings you right back into your body, and you will enjoy the pleasure of that moment much more.
Yeah, I could see that being helpful, because I know, excuse me, I mentioned having COVID last week too. But I had another woman on an episode that talked about the mental health part of it too. And I know we may have missed the practical application of, how to get into your head, but yeah, it definitely makes sense. And that's where women have orgasms, like you said, is in our head, or it's, between our ears, as we say. So
yeah. And it really, there's a lot of things that you can do to get that motor running, and just figuring out what are your accelerators and what are your brakes. So what turns you on and what turns you off. And so it's a lot we can get into, but I'm sure you have plenty of questions, and we'll get all around to this.
yeah, well, actually, since you brought that up, why don't we talk about the accelerators and the brakes, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is not mine. I actually get it from Emily Nagoski. She has some really great books. Come As You Are and Burnout are 2 of her books that I love. So I believe this comes from Come As You Are, and it's called The Accelerators and Brakes, because if you think about it, certain things in life turn us on and get us going. Like some people, when they're stressed out, they're like, I need a release. So I want to be sexual to release that tension. And so that's an accelerator for them. While other people, they get stressed out and they have nothing to do with physical touch because they're so focused on these other things. So that's a break. So really knowing what your accelerators and brakes are, and being able to communicate that, as well as knowing what your partners are. That way, when they're stressed out, you already know, oh, they're going to want to have sex or they're not going to want to have sex. These things really help, as well as like, I know me personally, an accelerator is having the kitchen cleaned. And that's because if not, I know I'm going to keep thinking about that in the back of my mind the whole time. So it makes sense to knock out the dishes. I also know that it's an accelerator for my partner as well. If he comes home from work and there are dishes to be done, like that's the primary focus. We both want a clean and structured, organized home. That makes us feel relaxed, which accelerates our potential for intimacy. Versus, so essentially, I initiate by doing the dishes so that when he walks in, it's a clean kitchen and we're both in the right headspace to be able to continue on. And it's kind of an ability for me to start getting my head in the game because I'm doing the dishes with the intention of this turning into something.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sure like that's a great way to sell it to the guys too. Like especially if you really like it clean and they might not, like if I have the dishes done or if I happen to walk in and they were done by you, that'd be a good thing for them. And yeah, just getting everything out of the way that's in the way of you wanting to have sex.
The honey-do list is a great way to get into your wife into the mood because a lot of men, when I coach a man on his marriage and how to improve things, sometimes I'm like, hey, if you see that the laundry needs to be done, give her help her out, do it with her. Say, hey, we can do this twice as fast if we both do it together. You fold and I'll put away, or whatever that may look like for you. But oftentimes people think, well, that's not sexy, but it is, in fact, because you are now releasing her from having the mental burden of these house chores that need to be done. And one of the primary drivers for many women in their feminine energy is space. Having space and freedom allows them to then drop into their body, get their mind going, and like really be in the mood. But when she feels pressure in the sense of like a long to-do list or, the kids or all these different aspects of life, that pressure does not leave her in a space where she can get turned on as easily.
Yeah. I mean, I always relate it back to the love languages. So acts of service. And then if it's quality time, the suggestion of doing stuff together would obviously help in that. And then just being close to each other. And yeah, it's like a gift if you want to, if you know that person doesn't like it and it's a gift to you, if they'll do it for you. So there's many ways I can always relate it. Yeah.
The love languages are so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up the other books earlier, because that's definitely a focus of my podcast is offering books and resources. So I'm glad you did that. And I know we talked about that earlier. So, but, all right. And then any other suggestions? I mean, I feel like we should just keep going along those lines, like practical stuff.
Some of the things that I find work for my women, as I do offer a course where I teach women how to drop into their feminine. So to understand energy is everything. We are just atoms bouncing around. There's more empty space in each of us than actual matter, which is mind-blowing. So when we have an interaction in a sexual aspect, we are connecting to energies. And so you want to have that polarization. So you can think about two magnets, a positive and a negative. They come together and they attract. When you have two positives, they repel. Same thing with two negatives. So if we apply the masculine to, say, the positive and the feminine to the negative, we want to be able to have each of those energies in our relationship to be able to feel that sexual tension building. So what happens is oftentimes nowadays women have not only the home life and the kids and such, but also a career. When we're at work, we have to be in our masculine most of the time, depending on career. But essentially that means structure, control, logical thinking. We want to have systems and strategies, their to-do list, so we can get stuff done, take action. The feminine energy, though, is much more go with the flow, softness, artistic, creative, just kind of really feeling being present in the moment. And so it's hard to be in the feminine at work, but we tend to bring that masculine energy from work home with us. And then we don't have habits in place that allow us to drop into the feminine. So then we fight with our husband. We have a conflict in the relationship because he wants to be in his masculine that feels good to him. And so by us showing up in our masculine, the only thing that he can do is drop into his feminine, or else it's just going to be fighting unless you do. So one of you has to be in each of those energies. So now that we know that aspect, what we as women want to focus on is how do I come home, or how do I get myself into that feminine space, that feminine, that freedom, having space. So some of the things that help are a bubble bath, or reading a book for a little while, maybe sipping on your favorite glass of wine, or really enjoying just a single piece of really rich dark chocolate. Not like scarfing anything down, but like really just small taste, enjoy the pleasure of that moment. I also find things like writing, journaling, painting, anything in the sense of my primary driver for dropping into my feminine is movement. Very much putting on sensual movement, just dancing, caressing my body, maybe being naked in front of a mirror and just kind of feeling myself. That brings out that divine feminine. That brings out that internal goddess, whatever you want to call it. But her, where she's really into her body. It doesn't matter what you look like, it matters what you feel like. And so these practices and finding ways to change your outfit when you get home into something flowy and something that's bright colored or floral or just makes you feel good. Doing things like letting your hair down when our hair is tight and up in a bun or in a hair ponytail, it very much is masculine vibes. So we want to let our hair down, let it flow. We want to breathe, really meditate and breathe. All of these things are going to allow you to down regulate your nervous system. You're going to go into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your pause, your breathe, you're able to digest and what they call feed and breed. So the men and women both want to do this in their own ways. So those are some really practical things that you can apply. And you can just say, okay, I'm going to come home, change my clothes, let my hair down. I'm going to take a quick bath, maybe journal while I'm in the tub or read a good book. And then by the time I get out of that bath, I feel clean, I feel sexy. And then from there, I can go and I can initiate sex with my partner, which is a lot of women forget that as an option, right? We always think we need to be chased. Sometimes it feels really powerful to be the one chasing, to be that one to initiate, because then you get to be the giver in that moment, but then you get to receive in the bedroom. And that feels good too. So there's that balance, that equilibrium, that equality in your relationship that makes him feel supported and makes him want to then support you in return.
Yeah, I've done an episode with a woman who's in a female-led relationship, and she talked about how it gave her a lot of confidence. And then obviously, I'm sure most guys would appreciate having, someone initiating. And I'm the opposite. Like, I'm usually the one, like you said, waiting for the guy to initiate. So yeah, it's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah, sometimes initiating can just be knowing he's coming home at a certain time and having, be it child households are a little bit different, but having a sexy outfit on, already have the lights in the bedroom set, have music playing. So when he comes in, you're just kind of greet him and it's like, hey, and you walk him right in. Like that for him can make him feel spoiled, feel like a king, feel recognized, especially if we know that his love language is physical touch. And so it's going to make him feel really thought of, really loved, which then in return, next time he sees the dishes need to be done, he's like, oh, her love language is acts of service. And she made me feel loved last night. I'm going to help her with the dishes. It'll make her feel loved. It becomes a really reciprocal cycle. And a lot of times we get stuck in, well, he didn't do this for me, so I'm not going to do that for him. And it's like, well, we can't control them. We can only control ourselves. So we might as well take initiative and just start building the habit of showing them love first and then allow them to show it in return.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that complaint where, well, I don't want to be the one always doing everything, but once you start, it's gonna come back. So but they feel like, I've had a friend or two say that, like, I don't want to do all the work. I don't want to feel like I have to do the first move on everything. So yeah, definitely.
But is it really work when we're initiating?
Yeah, I know it, but yeah, I don't get it. And well, I read this book, Queen's Code, that talks a lot about this and just how differently men and women think. And they call it frog farming, like basically turning princes into frogs with how you relate to them and react to them. And so I and a bunch of, I was in a Zoom group with women that read the book, and we all talked about how we were basically frog farmers. So yes, for whatever reason, that mentality was there. But we think of, such a good book. If you want to see how differently men and women think, definitely check it out. But yeah, what were you
Yeah.
going to say?
There are a lot of great things to remember is men and women do think differently. We come from different perspectives. We have different drivers, especially if you dive all the way back and you go through like where were we in Paleolithic times? Like what does that look like? You know, one of the things is a little known fact that might help some women is that women have this innate, it's almost like an amnesia. And what it is that we have about a 30-minute period of time after we have an amazing raging orgasm that we are on this chemical high. We just had flooded with dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, you name it. We have all these neurochemicals happening. We feel really good in our skin. We want to connect. We want to love and dove and cuddle. And there's that moment. But then about that 30-minute mark, we forget. And then from there, we're back to life. We're back in, the chemicals are gone, and we almost forget that we like sex. We forget that sex is good and orgasms feel good. And then they come back a day later and they're like, hey, you want to do that again? And you're like, no, and then we go into that. It is work to initiate. It is a chore list to do this. And it's that mindset. So by having that small shift, I heard this all in a TED Talk originally. She was giving the advice that you should almost tattoo or write on the back of your hand, I like sex, because we tend to have this amnesia. So when I'm in those moments personally where he's initiating, I can see it's genuine. I'm not necessarily, there's no reason for me to not want to have sex right now. You know, maybe I'm a little bit tired. That could be an excuse, or there's always an excuse you can find, right? I literally look at the back of my hand and I imagine those words, I like sex. And then from there, I can go, that's right. I do like sex. Oh, yeah. You remember that one time that, and then it gets my brain going, which gets that first organ in shape. And then I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? I know I need caressing. And so I'll just start to touch my arms, even if it's just in the crease of the elbow, just lightly, gently touch my neck. And these things start to get my body going, which then creates that blood flow to transfer from our brain to our sexual organs. Because we only have so much blood flow in the body, right? And oftentimes when we're overthinking or we are coming off a work day and our brain is just zip, 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 it's because all the blood is up here. And our sexual organs, they feel almost numb because there's just no sensation. We require blood flow for our erogenous tissues to engorge. And that's when the neurons start to fire and the neuropathy is there and it feels really good. And so if you just go to your body first without moving that blood flow by closing down the brain and getting into the body and starting your processes, whatever that looks like to you, to get that blood flow there, then it's going to stay numb and you're going to be like, I don't know, this doesn't feel good. It's like, okay, cool. What can I do to start to get more blood flow? Because the clitoris is something I love to teach on. A lot of people don't know about it, but there are two bulbs or vestibules is what they call them, vestibular bulbs. And these bulbs swell just like a male penis does. It engorges with blood. And when it does that, it feels so good. And until we can get to that point, it's going to be like, meh. And so if you're having a meh situation, it's because you just don't have enough blood flow yet.
Yeah, no, I've felt that engorgement before, and I've talked about this in other episodes. And it is, yeah, it's so much easier to have an orgasm when it's already like that way. And I totally lost my train of thought. Something about, oh yeah, so back to touching or caressing yourself to get your, out of your head to your body. I've always, because I've done stand up where I talk about, kind of just point out where men are missing the boat with foreplay and touch and stuff like that. So I've always relied on a guy to start that part, but it's good to know you just kind of start touching yourself and then get in the mood. And then if they don't touch you or don't touch you as often or as much as you would like, you've started it already. And like you said, get the blood flow going. So
yeah, there's a lot of things, because this is for a lot of women. One, I find that common theme is that they just have lack of knowledge. But that's where we're here producing a podcast like this. And we get to get this knowledge out there. But then the next step is like, okay, well, how do I apply this knowledge? So that comes through experimenting and exploring. And I know these things about my body because I've spent the last 10 plus years exploring my body and exploring these things. So yes, don't rely on your partner to bring you your pleasure. You need to chase that just like you chase money. Just like you chase kids, just like you chase a house, whatever it is that you want in life, you're not going to wait for it to come to you and then get upset that it's not the way you want it. You want to go after what you want. So if you know that, part of the problem is women don't even know what they like, right? How do I tell somebody how to pleasure me if I don't even know what I like? So taking time, lay on your bed, maybe just cover your eyes with a blindfold or a t-shirt or whatever, just because the more you take senses away, the more powerful it makes the other senses. So by closing your eyes, turning the lights off, something like that, it allows you to not see, but now feel on a more intense level. And you could even put headphones on where it's noise canceling or some sort of light music. And that again will also enhance, but just lay there, caress your body, figure out what parts feel the best. Sometimes it's weird things like the upper back, behind the kneecaps, your feet. There are 181 erogenous zones on our body. Most people only think of 2 of them. We have to know there's so much more earlobes, necks, foreheads, cranial region. There's so many places, but you don't know until you try, right?
Yeah.
So step 1 is just learn your own body. Maybe that's in a nice warm bath and you just get a chance to feel yourself a little bit. Try different movements and types and speeds, maybe incorporating some toys into your play. And then once you have that foundational understanding, then you could start to communicate to your partner and say, hey, I really love it when you caress my skin. I really love that. And it helps me get into my body, which then helps turn me on, which puts me in the mood. He is going to go, oh man, I'm going to do that every day now. And so you can positively program your partner through positive reinforcement instead of, well, that was shit. And I didn't feel good, or I didn't like that. It's like, okay, cool. In what we call aftercare, after you have a sexual interaction with somebody, you often want to lay there or kindly talk about, what did you enjoy? What could have been better? Great things to talk about. Most people are ready to tell them what was terrible, but they don't ever want to say what they enjoyed. And, it's always, you want to follow that up that you were touching it in this way. It started to make it pinch in a sharp pain. So maybe next time, if you just do it this way, or if you, give them some direction, maybe, thank you for the oral that you performed. It was a little bit fast for the pace I'm looking for. I kind of really like it when it's slower, or when you use a flatter tongue, not as pointy, or give them some feedback. That's how they get better. And nobody is a sex god without guidance. Yeah. Even if they are with one partner, they move to a new partner. It's a whole new playing field, right?
Yeah,
just
definitely.
Give them direction.
Yeah. And I do struggle with that. Like you said, most women do. And I've had this a couple episodes now where we talk about this. So I'm going to finally do it, where I'm going to just turn off the lights, get some noise canceling stuff, blindfold, and see what happens. But I know my upper arm is one spot, so that I always, if a guy will hit it, I'll know it. So now I should start doing it myself. But yeah. And did you want to talk about the launch of your podcast, or do you want to talk more about orgasms, or if you feel like you've covered it enough, then we can start. I want to make sure you get to talk about your podcast and your Swan Academy and all the stuff.
Yeah, I think one more thing that came up with orgasm for just a moment there, and I just lost it, so I'm going to find it in just a second. Because we just talked about how we need to know ourselves more, and how the blood flow is super important, and communicating with a partner.
And we had said it engorging, and that's when I stepped in, so it might have been even that far back.
It's all good. So we want to get ourselves fluffy. And fluffy is a term that some people love, some people hate. Fluffy is that part when you feel it swollen. The lips themselves will change in size and in color. It's super powerful. And gosh, it's okay. It'll come back to me. If not, we'll do a whole nother episode, because I literally talk on orgasms for hours and hours. But yeah, I guess something to talk about is a little bit on my backstory. How is it that I know so much about orgasm? Where does that even come from? So I guess if we go back 10 years, in fact, if we went back to my youth, and I was a kid, I was actually born in a family that was extremely religious. My dad was a pastor of a megachurch. And so I didn't get the sex talk. I got abstinence, and that's it. And there was nothing there. So unfortunately, having that lack of information and knowledge, which is why I share so much now, is it led me to abusive relationships, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, you name it. I've experienced it. And that's why I fight so hard for other people who are in domestic violence relationships, or even their own head is being violent towards them because of their thought processes. I carried a lot of shame in my body for the sexual experiences that I had had. And due to that shame, plus lack of hydration, lack of nutrition, lack of movement, and a few other aspects, I started to develop what is called a Bartholin gland cyst. And it was a cyst on the labia of the vulva. So the outside lips, the labia majora. So if you just think of the base entry of the vaginal canal, it has two little glands called the greater vestibular bulbs, and these glands create a secretion called sebum, which is it's the liquid and the kind of the precum that we have when we're stimulated and aroused. So unfortunately, what happened was that gland got clogged and then started to swell. So I had it drained in the ER, and then it came back 3 days later. And so we went into an emergency surgery as it was now infected and became an abscess. It was about the size of a golf ball and was then removed in surgery. 3 months later, it came back again. So we went back into yet another surgery, and that surgery was failed. So it came back 3 months later, had another doctor go through surgery, on and on and on. Needless to say, it's a very long story, but over the last 10 years, I have had 7 surgeries on my vulva. So I personally have quite a lot of pain in that area. So I wanted to learn because I was not going to give up on having a pleasure-filled life. I wanted it so badly. And I knew the power of pleasure in connecting with partners, how that is literally the glue in a relationship. It's the only difference between a friend and a husband, or a friend and a boyfriend, is the pleasure that you get to experience in the bedroom together. So what I did was I did research, and I learned about myself. I learned about neurochemistry. I learned about the brain. And what I learned was that pain and pleasure are the exact same neural pathway in the brain. And so it's up to us and how we go about setting up our situation that determines whether or not I'm going to, or you're going to, feel extreme pain or extreme pleasure. And so once I learned that, then I learned the power of the atmosphere and the ambiance. So now lights in the bedroom are, you can get some LED lights and throw them up. They're game changer when you can change the lighting from your normal bright fluorescence to these nice deep reds and pinks or blues. And you can change that. Putting on soft music calms my nervous system. I know that. I know I need a lot of foreplay, both mental and physical. I know that I need to use specific toys to get myself warmed up. I know I need to get to a specific arousal rate to be able to then allow my partner to join the party. And then from there, I won't have any pain. But if we don't do those steps and we don't get to that arousal point and we just try and have a quickie or jump in like a normal couple, it will be painful, and he is not game with that, and neither am I. So through that process of learning all about that, I learned so much about female anatomy, obviously lots of scientific terms, mostly because I feel like it empowers men and women to know the actual anatomy of what's happening, and to stop calling it a vagina, because there's a vaginal canal, yes, but it is a vulva. And so that all led me to learning the science behind it. And now I can apply that to other people. And over the years, I've been certified in everything from nutrition, because I think that's a huge, huge component to this, of a personal trainer, a group fitness trainer, I have 3 love certifications, love coach, relationship coach, and master sexpert. So keep your eyes out, as well as getting certified in neurolinguistic programming, and mental and emotional release and hypnosis. And that's because I now love working with my clients on a deeper level, because I know that the sexual shame that was carried through those years led to where I am today, which is that sexual shame negatively impacted my pleasure life for a very long time and my orgasms, because I wasn't allowed to have pleasure. It wasn't meant for that. It was for his pleasure, not my pleasure. It didn't matter if I got off, if he got off. Like, these negative spirals that I was in, I have learned to let go of and process from. And now I know that he actually gets more turned on when I'm more turned on. The more orgasms I have, the more pleasure he gets. So there's so much more. We choose what our mind does. And so now I have the blessing of having skills and techniques and tools to equip my clients with, so they can finally let go of that shame they've been carrying. They can finally prioritize pleasure. And oftentimes it saves marriages. It allows people to escape those toxic relationships that they're being verbally and physically abused in. It allows people to let go of that I'm not enoughness and finally step into, like, I'm fucking worthy of every bit and every ounce of my orgasm, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 orgasms in a row. You better believe. And ladies, do not stop at 1. Please, please do not stop at 1, because rolling orgasms are where it's at. That's a whole episode we could have. But I did, gosh, I just came back to what that thought process was and I lost it again. Oh, good gravy. But yes, that's kind of what led me to what I'm doing today. And it's all contributes to our orgasms, right? Every single bit of it, because our thoughts become our words, and our words become our actions. Actions become behaviors, and behaviors get your outcome. So if you're negatively speaking about orgasms to others and yourself, you're never going to fully enjoy them. And orgasms are game changers. They're so powerful. You can manifest things with them. You can connect on a deep level with them, which can be a positive and a negative. Because if you're dating and you have orgasms with someone too quickly, you can now have what's called the love goggles. You have those pair bonding chemicals and you can get yourself in some trouble. But in a steady relationship, it's so much the glue to what you want to do, and extremely, extremely powerful.
Yeah. And I tell this story often about, I had my best orgasm when I was 18 with the guy I had been dating for like a year. And it was powerful. Like you said, I had this like hot liquid rushing through my body for like a minute. And then it took me a while to get over him. I never really let myself have that kind again. So, and I used to say like, oh, I can only have one, but now I know it's, I think I've had 6 in one day. That's like the most, but not the rolling kind, like you mentioned. That would be awesome. I've never done that. So,
yeah. And I think that a lot of women haven't experienced the level of satisfaction their bodies are capable of for that very reason, is they don't believe it's possible, because nobody's ever told them it's possible. My little tushy is here to tell you this is possible for you. Now, one of the things you have to overcome is the fact that there is a moment right before your first or your second orgasm where your body naturally has a tendency to want to push away and is like, no, no, no. There's a difference between an actual no, where you know logically this is not a good situation to be in. I am unsafe. I'm not okay. That's different. We are talking about you trust this person. You're in a safe space. You are just feeling that body urge to want to push away. My encouragement would be, if you know you're safe, know that you trust this person and that you're okay, push through that, because what that is you're coming to the peak right before climax, and when you push away, it flatlines and you don't get to enjoy that orgasm and you're pretty much done for the day. But when you push past that and you allow yourself to just breathe, just take some deep breaths, you will end up having that first or second or third orgasm. And then from there, they're almost going to start coming faster and quicker. And then you might have one roll into the next and not even know when one starts and one ends. And just love on it. The other thing to remember is that the clitoris is the powerhouse of pleasure. So we need external touching. We need external stimulation to actually enjoy full orgasm. You don't just get that through penetration. So while we love the men and women that we have joining us in the bedroom, we need clitoral play. I would highly encourage using your own hand or having them use a hand or using a little bullet toy just to give some extra stimulation. Oh my gosh, there's so much. I'm trying to like filter in my brain through what all to say because here's a massive pro tip just for anyone who has a hard time finding that pleasure zone. When looking at the clitoris, we're just looking at the external part that you can actually see just under the hood. The upper left-hand quadrant from your perspective, if you're looking down, upper left-hand quadrant is the most pleasureful quadrant. So if you want to put your hand or a toy there, not necessarily directly on top, but to the left and then just kind of into it, lean into it a little bit, that's going to hit the dorsal nerve, which it runs across the top of the clitoris. And that's truly going to bring you the most pleasure. So just explore that zone. It's a lot of fun. You'll find some great things happening there. And I do know what I wanted to come back to verbally. So we talked about explaining what you need to your partner, right? Knowing your body enough to be able to communicate those things. So when I talk about communicating with your partner, I'm not talking about in the moment. Because once we hit a specific level of arousal, we no longer can communicate. Because you get to that point where you're like, all you're getting is, oh God, yes, faster, slower, yes, harder. Like you get one word answers from there on out, right? So when we want to talk to our partner is either directly after while we're still in that 30-minute mental high, essentially, from your pleasure, or you want to talk about it beforehand and not like talk about it and then walk into the bedroom. I'm talking like dinner a couple hours before, talking about it, or a week before, or at some point, giving that consent in advance and telling them in advance when you're out of the heat of the moment is the best way to communicate those things. Because when you're in the heat of the moment and arousal is involved, again, blood flow stops flowing to your brain and starts flowing to the lady bits. And we really, really want to keep it there. But when you're trying to put together sentences, your blood starts to go away from your vulva and back to your brain. And then now it doesn't feel as pleasurable. So ensure that you talk before so that you can actually communicate that. And then let them know, because you don't mean to be mean in the moment when you're like, no, not that, like this. Like, sometimes we don't say it in a super nice way because it's not coming out in a full sentence. So just communicate that with your partner beforehand. Like, what do you want to hear from me? And if he says faster is good, it's cool. I'll just say that. So just having those kind of understandings, even taking a spin off on a safe word and just have other words that mean a full sentence. You know what I mean? So like if this doesn't feel good, try this could be boiled down into one word that he could go, oh, okay, I know I'm not doing this. Let me change what I'm doing. Or, things of that nature. But just keep in mind that arousal can impact our ability to communicate in the bedroom.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. And I will second what you said about when it comes to the point where you're about to, you can't stand it and you try to push it away. That's usually when I do. And the one time I didn't push it away was when I had the best orgasm ever. So
Yes.
I definitely second that. And like you said, when to talk about it. So all very good points. And we are nearing the end. So if you want to either do final comments or talk about your podcast or your Swan Academy or all this stuff you want to share with everyone. But thank you so much so far.
Yeah. So my podcast, Happy, Healthy, Horny, is launching this Friday, June 17th. We'll be launching with a series of solo episodes where you can understand the foundation of what it is that I teach and believe. Then beyond that, it will be a combination of solo episodes going deep on a specific topic, or I'll be bringing in industry experts. So the idea behind this podcast is not that it's always about relationships or intimacy or love or sex. It actually is about the things outside of that are important. So happy, we're going to talk about mental health. How does that play into our relationships and our love life? And then healthy, how does our nutrition, our food, our movement, our sleep habits, all those things that keep us healthy, how does that play into our sex life? And then, of course, horny, and why being horny is important, and how horniness is actually an indicator of health, as well as other things. So I'll be bringing experts on who are mental health experts, or maybe they're fitness experts, nutrition experts, or, just all sorts of different people from different walks of life to be able to talk about the aspects outside of how do I touch and when do I touch. So that's really what you can look for there. It's a passion project of mine that I've been working on for many years, and we're finally here ready to launch. So I'm so excited. Beyond that, if you're looking to connect or learn more, I do have 2 courses available. We're about to relaunch my women's course, and we are playing with the name. So Satisfy Your Sexy is the new title we are working with. It is a 14-week program where you get to come in and learn everything about feminine energy, how to drop into it, talk about wardrobe, beauty. We're going to teach you how to walk in heels, maybe dance in heels. You might or might not have a few chair dance lessons, and how to do a striptease with a robe. And, I love to get into that fun stuff. So if you're looking for a community of women to come in and kind of learn more how to grow that part of yourself, that's really a great space. I also have the Modern Day Gentleman, which is my men's course. It is parallel to that, and it is the same topics, but we talk on a masculine energy level. So it's more stats, statistics, figures, charting, the exactly what to do and how to do it is in that program. So if you're looking to dance and journal and release some of that negative sexual energy that you hold from the past, then our female program is the place to be. If you want to learn more about how to step into that masculine energy, which might be great for career or managing your household or your kids, then my Modern Day Gentleman course is, neither one is you don't have to be gender specific. They essentially are a feminine program and a masculine program. And they're both things that I poured my heart and soul into and absolutely love, as well as offering coaching. I do on a high level, very selective with a small group of people that I allow for coaching so that I can give them my full focus and my full energy. So yeah, that's what we have right now, with a couple other courses in the works and lots of other amazing opportunities to connect and grow together. I'm all about, if you follow me on social media, I have a couple different pages, but the primary main page that I love to just put all sorts of stuff on is my Instagram page, Jayna.Swan. And if you go there, you will either laugh, learn, or learn to love every single day, because that's what it's all about, right? Sometimes we just need an uplifting message to encourage us to get up and push through the day. Sometimes we need a laugh to be able to get some humor and feel good. And then sometimes we need to learn to love ourselves a little bit more. And so you can find all of that there. And that's also the page you'll find any other pages will be recommended there as well. So if you're looking for more specific stuff for things, that's the place to be.
All right. Awesome for all the information. And yeah, I follow you on Instagram, so I've seen a lot of your reels, and good to know you can find the other stuff there too. So, all right. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for being on. It was a pleasure meeting you at PodFest, and glad we got to connect, and we will stay connected. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it and tell your friends about it and rate it. And thanks for listening. And thank you, Jayna.
Thank you.
Frank Talk, Sex and Dating educates.